July 15th, the attorney for the parents of Nolan met and said, yes, we want to give over the phone, but we want someone in the middle here, someone from the outside, an expert to analyze the phone. It appeared everyone agreed. Then all of a sudden, they get a letter saying, we want the phone and you have 24 hours to send it over. The DA sent that. And the parents were out of town and said, wait, we don't have the time to do that. Hence the narrative that they're not cooperating. Now, they say, Nolan's parents, look, we have our experts on standby. This week, pick a day.
6 weeks. 6 weeks since Nolan Wells's body came off the shore of Horn Island. 6 weeks of statements and counter-statements and lawyers on television telling you two completely different versions of the same afternoon. And in all of that time, there is one object at the center of this case that nobody, not the district attorney, not the FBI, not a single forensic examiner in the state of Mississippi, has opened. His phone, not cracked, not extracted, not read, sitting there untouched. Now think about what that means. Because a phone is not a witness. A phone doesn't drink at a party. A phone doesn't misremember. A phone doesn't have a lawyer coaching it. A phone records the exact minute a message was sent, the exact minute a photograph was taken, the exact minute somebody opened Snapchat on a boat in the Mississippi Sound. And it holds on to the things people thought they erased. Every question in this case runs through that device. What was said that afternoon? Who said it? When? What was deleted? And when it was deleted? And there is a working theory, one that a former FBI digital forensics expert laid out on Nancy Grace's program, that the single most important piece of evidence in the death of Nolan Wells may be one message, one text, still sitting in unallocated space on a phone that has been in a drawer for 6 weeks. Here's the part that has people genuinely angry tonight. The reason nobody has read it is not what you've been told. You've heard the narrative. You've heard that the family is stonewalling, that they're refusing to hand it over, that they've had it this whole time and won't give it up. The dates tell a different story. And when the district attorney's office finally moved on that phone, when the letter finally came, the timing of it is what has this family's attorneys dug in and refusing to blink, because of what week it landed on. A week they will never get back. We'll get to that. But before any of it, there's a contradiction that surfaced on live television that nobody has explained. Two people describing the same event, two accounts that cannot both be true, and one of them came from the lawyer for the people who took Nolan Wells to that island.
When we look at how this has played out over the last 6 weeks, how law enforcement has acted, they haven't seized Nolan Wells's phone at this point. In a criminal investigation, law enforcement's going to use those tools to get this information. So this could just be a drowning.
Here's what was said on air, a claim that all but one of the group took a polygraph, and that from what was relayed, they all passed. All passed. That's a powerful sentence. It's the kind of sentence that ends a case in the public mind. It travels, it gets clipped, it becomes the thing everybody repeats in the comments for a month. And then Tyler Cox answered it. Tyler Cox is the attorney representing the acquaintances who took Nolan out to Horn Island on the boat called the Triton. He is, by Nancy Grace's own description, a renowned trial lawyer who wins a lot of cases. He is not a bystander. He is not speculating about his own clients. He is the man who would know. And what he said was this, quote, "Nancy, my clients have not taken a polygraph test." Sit with that for a second. Not, "I can't comment." Not, "That's between us and investigators." A flat denial of the underlying fact. His clients did not take a polygraph. So one of two things is true. Either a claim went out on air about a test that never happened, or the attorney for the people who were on that boat is describing his own client's cooperation differently than someone else is describing it. Those don't reconcile. There's no version where both are accurate. And this matters far beyond the polygraph itself, because polygraph results aren't admissible in court in this jurisdiction anyway. That's not the point. The point is what it tells you about the information environment around this case. You have been consuming claims about this investigation for 6 weeks. And here is a claim, a big one, a case-closing one, that the lawyer for the Central Group says is simply not so. Cox didn't stop there either. He said something that got much less attention and is far more interesting. Quote, "Nobody's guilty and everybody's a suspect. We don't know the truth yet, but we will." Read that again. That is not a lawyer saying his clients have been cleared. That is a lawyer saying nobody has been cleared, including, by the plain sense of the words, his own clients. Defense attorneys do not usually say that. Defense attorneys say, "My clients have fully cooperated and this matter is closed." Cox went the other direction. Everybody's a suspect. And he added that the truth is coming, which raises the obvious question. Coming from where? Because there is only one place in this case where a hard, objective, minute-by-minute record could still be sitting. Let's talk about what we can actually see. There is footage. It surfaced through the Officer Tatum show, and Nancy Grace walked her control room through it, frame by frame on air. It shows people at the dock. It shows the Triton being prepared. It shows people getting on, people getting off, and it keeps rolling long enough to show the group that boarded. The timestamp on that activity is around 1 o'clock, and there's a moment in it. Nancy stops the playback. There's a figure down at the right of the frame, light blue shorts, and at that time, a white shirt. Her read, on air, "I think that's Nolan right there." So we have him. We have him at the dock. We have him boarding. That part of the timeline is on video. Now here is the question Nancy Grace put to Dave Mack, the Crime Stories investigative reporter, and it is the question that should be keeping everybody up at night. Where is the video of them coming back? Dave Mack's answer was short. Quote, "Nancy, we have not seen evidence of them coming back." And then he added the detail that widens the whole thing out. 3 boats caravan to that island, 3, not 1. And there are different accounts of when they arrived back on the mainland. But there is no video of any of them. Stop and think about the shape of that. We can watch them leave. We cannot watch them return. And the accounts of when they got back don't line up with each other. That is an absence. And absences are strange things in an investigation, because an absence isn't evidence of wrongdoing. Marinas have cameras that fail, angles that don't cover the slip, recordings that loop and overwrite after 30 days, which, count it, is well inside the window we're now past. But an absence is also the thing that can never be filled in later. Once that footage is gone, it is gone. There's no second copy sitting in a drawer. There's no expert who can reconstruct it. So the return trip, the single leg of that day when Nolan Wells was, by every account, no longer aboard, is the one leg with no visual record at all, and whatever record does exist of those hours exists in one place. You already know where. Now here's the part of this story that most coverage gets backwards, because there is a claim, in this case, that, if it holds up, clears the people on that boat completely. And it came from their own attorney. Tyler Cox says he has witnesses. His account, multiple people reached out. 2 of them confirmed. 2 witnesses who say they saw Nolan Wells on Horn Island around 6 o'clock in the evening on the 4th of July. He describes them as people who know Nolan, who have known him for years. Reliable, credible, upstanding members of the community, in his words. He says there is no chance they made a mistake, that they made a positive identification, and that they went to investigators and told them exactly that from the very start. Now, apply that to the timeline, the Triton's own GPS, and this is a point where Nancy Grace says the defense is right, puts the boat leaving Horn Island around 4:30. So if Nolan Wells was alive and standing on that island somewhere between 5 and 6 in the evening, after the Triton was already gone, then the people on that boat could not have been responsible for what happened to him. Not physically, not chronologically. Nancy Grace said it herself, and she said it plainly. She's not razor-locked on them. She's looking at everybody. And if those witnesses are telling the truth, the acquaintances on the Triton are in the clear. That's the reversal. That's the thing this case keeps refusing to sit still long enough for anyone to notice. But, and this is a very large but, Watch what happened when a room full of trial lawyers was asked to actually test that claim. Nancy Grace's first question was the right one, and she asked it 5 different ways. What witnesses, where, who, what, why, and when. Because right now, that's all we have. An assertion. 2 people exist, they saw him, they're credible, trust us. No names, no positions, no statements, no description of how far away they were or what they were looking at. Then Nancy went back to that doc video, the shot of the figure bent over, where all you can really see is the blue trunks. And she made a point that lands hard. Her words? Now, that's not a very good eyewitness right there. She believes it's Nolan. She said so. And then she said what she'd do with it in a courtroom. Quote, I would tear that up in court, tear it to shreds. Because here is what an eyewitness identification faces on cross-examination in Mississippi, in Georgia, in Florida, anywhere. And she rattled it off from memory. How far were you from the person? What was the lighting? Do you wear glasses? Were you wearing them? Were you inebriated? Had you smoked anything? Did anything obstruct your view? Was it day or night? What were the conditions? Greg Morris, veteran trial lawyer, founder of Morris Legal, practicing in the Southern District of Florida, former West Palm Beach public defender, went through it, point by point. His assessment? There are no details attached to this identification at all. It's a broad statement that other people saw Nolan after the boat left. And on the visual we do have, you're looking at a view from behind of someone bending over. Was the person wearing sunglasses? Were they familiar enough to identify him? How much had they had to drink over the course of the day? Because, and this is the detail that reframes everything, this was a party scene. That's what these island boat spots are. Morris said he has one near him in West Palm Beach with an almost identical setup. Peanut Island. And then he made the observation that anyone who has ever been asked to remember something knows is true. People don't think something is important until after the fact. They're just going about their day, noticing people walking past. Nobody on that island on the 4th of July was taking notes. So where does that leave the sighting? Unverified, uncorroborated by anything public, made by an attorney with a client interest, describing witnesses whose identities we don't have, about a person seen at a distance, in a crowd, at a party, weeks ago. That is not the same as false. It could be entirely true. Cox also said it can be corroborated through other evidence and other eyewitness accounts. And if that corroboration exists, it changes the entire complexion of this case in an afternoon. But it hasn't been produced, and a claim that hasn't been tested isn't an answer. It's just a louder question. Which brings us to the only thing in this entire case that cannot be cross-examined, cannot be coached, cannot get drunk at a party, and cannot forget. If you've made it this far, you're clearly following this case closely, which means you're exactly the kind of person who should be subscribed. It costs you nothing. It takes 1 second, and this family has spent 6 weeks asking people to pay attention. The least we can do is keep showing up. Now the phone. You have almost certainly heard at some point in the last few weeks that Nolan Wells' family is refusing to hand over his cell phone, that they're the reason this is stalled, that they're sitting on it. Here are the actual dates. Follow them carefully, because the dates are the whole story. The 15th of July. The attorney for Nolan's parents meets with the other side, and the family's position at that meeting is not refusal. It's the opposite. Yes, you can have the phone. One condition, they want somebody in the middle, an outside expert, an independent examiner present when that phone is analyzed, not instead of the state, alongside the state. And according to Susan Hendricks, veteran investigative journalist, author of Down the Hill, My Descent into the Double Murder in Delphi, it appeared that everyone agreed. That was the understanding walking out of that room on the 15th of July. Then what happens? Nothing. That's not a figure of speech. There is no follow-up. Not that week, not the week after, not the week after that. The 19th of July comes and goes. And that date matters, though not for any legal reason. The 19th of July would have been Nolan Wells's 19th birthday. His parents spent it without him, and without any word about the phone that was supposedly the urgent priority. Still nothing through the end of July. Still nothing through the first week and a half of August. And then, the 12th of August, a letter arrives from the district attorney's office. Turn over the phone. You have 24 hours. 24 hours after 28 days of silence. And here's where it stops being a procedural dispute and starts being something else entirely. Nolan's parents were not in Mississippi. They were out of state, in Georgia, at the National Association of Black Journalists Conference. They weren't hiding. They weren't unreachable. They were on a stage, in public, speaking about their son. Their response, in substance, wait, we're not there. We can't physically do that. We thought we agreed on the 15th of July that we would come together and do this. And from that, from a deadline that landed while they were 9 hours away at a public conference, came the narrative, the one you've heard, that the family isn't cooperating. Susan Hendricks put it exactly that way on air, hence the narrative that they're not cooperating. Now, one honest note, because this matters and we're not going to smooth it over. Within that same broadcast, that deadline was described two different ways. 24 hours in one telling, 48 in another. So call it roughly a day, maybe two. It does not change the shape of the problem. Neither window is survivable when you are out of state and the request arrives cold after a month of silence. So where does it stand right now? The family's attorney has gone public with a standing offer. Their experts are on standby this week. Pick a day, any day, give us 24 hours notice and we'll make it happen. That's not stonewalling. That's an open invitation with a calendar attached. And Lisa Park of WLOX, who has been working directly with Nolan's mother, laid out precisely what the family is asking for. It's worth hearing in full, because it is not complicated and it is not obstructive. The Jackson County District Attorney's Office, the family's own forensic team, possibly the FBI, all of them, together, downloading and examining that phone at the same time. One examination, one time, everybody in the room. The family's words, through Park. We are waiting for the DA to determine the time, the place, the date. Let us know, and we are going to be there with our forensics team and anybody else. They are not asking to keep it. They are asking to watch, and their stated concerns. The actual list, the one raised back on the 15th of July, comes down to 5 things. Chain of custody, how the extraction is going to be performed, who would have access to the extracted data, preservation of the evidence itself, and when the phone is coming back to them. That last one isn't legal. That's a mother and a father. Dave Mack said it directly. This is the last thing they have of their son. Those 5 items were on the table on the 15th of July, and there was no follow-up on any of them until the 12th of August, when a letter arrived with a clock attached. Because that's the real question, isn't it? If the family's request is bizarre, if no functioning justice system does this, then maybe the friction makes sense. It isn't bizarre. It's Tuesday. Nancy Grace addressed it from the side of the aisle you'd least expect. As a former prosecutor, she said she has examined evidence herself at the crime lab with a defense attorney standing right there, and that she typically would not allow a defense team to examine evidence unless she was present. Not because she assumed they'd do something nefarious. Maybe? Probably not, she said, but because she didn't want them to touch it if touching it could compromise it. And handling evidence can compromise it. That's not paranoia. That's the entire reason chain of custody protocols exist. Now flip that around. Every single reason a prosecutor wants to be in the room when the defense examines. Evidence is a reason the family wants to be in the room when the state examines evidence. Same logic, same concern. Opposite chair. Joseph Scott Morgan, professor of forensics at Jacksonville State University, a death investigator with more than 10,000 death scenes behind him, confirmed it plainly. It happens. He has personally been in autopsy suites with defense attorneys present. all manner of people come through the labs over the years as an independent set of eyes. So no, the family is not asking for something exotic. They are asking for the standard practice that prosecutors themselves insist on when the shoe is on the other foot. But Morgan did raise a sharper question, and it cuts in an unexpected direction. Suppose the family's independent examiner does analyze the phone. What happens to those findings if the state chose not to participate? How many hands end up on that device? And would findings from an examination the state skipped survive in a courtroom? Nancy Grace's answer was immediate, and it should worry the district attorney's office more than it worries the family. If she were on the other side, the first thing she'd do is stand up on cross-examination and ask, "Isn't it true I gave you the opportunity to review this phone on this date and you didn't do it?" Which means every day that passes without a joint examination is a day the state hands somebody a cross-examination question it cannot answer. The clock isn't only running on the family.
According to the family, they have made the phone and their independent experts readily available.
The Jackson County DA's office, as well as our forensic team, and possibly the FBI, we're going to together download and examine the phone. So it's done one time with everybody together, right? This is very common in the law. This is what is supposed to happen. We are waiting for the DA to determine the time, the place, the date. Let us know, and we are going to be there with our forensics team and anybody else, but it's done one time, one examination. We're ready for it to happen.
All of the evidence was not documented at the scene. The police told, this is in Philly, told the apartment manager, sure, clean it up. As a matter of fact, here's a professional cleaner. Call them. They had it professionally cleaned. Bye-bye, evidence. Gone. Gone. Not only that, the apartment manager took a video of the inside of Ellen's apartment to show basically, look, this is how it was before. This is how it is after. We want to prove we didn't take anything. We didn't steal anything. Everything is accounted for. And that's SOP, Standard Operating Procedure. So when they didn't process the crime scene, they went, oh, thank goodness, at least we have the video. They handed the video over to Philly PD, and they lost it.
So let's get concrete. What would an examination actually produce? For this, Crime Stories brought in Scott Aker, and his resume is the reason this section matters. Digital forensics expert, founding member of the FBI's Cellular Analysis Survey team. Historical cellular analysis expert, 22 years with the Bureau. Before that, homicide with the Norfolk, Virginia Police Department. He's currently with Precision Cellular Analysis. This is not a commentator. This is the person you call. And the first thing he said is the thing that should make everybody stop. It's easy, not difficult, not exotic, not a 6-month backlog at a state lab. You take the physical phone, you connect it to a device. Cellbrite is one of the main producers of this kind of software, and you download it. The password is the first obstacle. If you don't have it, there are processes to get past it and into the device. But here is the part that dismantles the entire 6-week standoff. Aker was asked directly whether this can be done with other people standing by. Another investigator for the defense, someone for the family. His answer, yes, they can sit there and watch you download the phone. That's it. That's the thing that has been unresolved since the 15th of July. It is technically trivial, and it is done routinely. And the reason it doesn't compromise anything is the part most people misunderstand about digital forensics. You are not going into the phone and rummaging around. You are making a copy. Aker was explicit. Once you download a copy of what's on the phone, you're not really messing with the evidence on the phone. You're not changing it. You're copying it to another computer. Then you go through the copy. And what's in the copy? Text messages, photographs, Snapchat activity, a chronological reconstruction of those hours, assembled from every one of those sources at once. A timeline built not from memory, not from testimony, but from timestamps. Now, the deleted messages. Because this is where the entire title of this story lives. Nancy Grace pushed him on it, and she pushed with the right instinct. She pointed out that her own twins knew how to go into a phone at age 3 and empty the recently deleted folder. So what does deleted actually mean to a forensic examiner? Akers' answer in plain terms. On the examiner's screen, you're looking at the full list of text messages, and to the right of individual messages, it will tell you this one was deleted. The extraction flags them. It surfaces the fact of deletion as data. And then the deeper part. When you delete something on a phone, it doesn't evaporate. It gets moved to an area the phone isn't currently using. It sits there, and it stays there, content and all, until the phone starts filling up and begins writing over that space. His words, things that were deleted at some point in time, are still there and can be recovered. The actual content of the text messages is still there until it gets written over. Do you understand what that means in this specific case? It means the messages sent on and around the 4th of July, including any that somebody chose to remove, may still be sitting in unallocated space on a phone that has been powered down and untouched in a family's possession for 6 weeks. A phone that isn't being used isn't overwriting anything. But the moment somebody starts using a device, that clock starts. Storage fills. Old data gets written over. And once it's overwritten, no expert on earth brings it back. And Aker added one more detail that removes the last practical excuse. This doesn't require anyone to travel. There are portable rigs. The same kind of tactical extraction kit used when investigators went into the home during the Nancy Guthrie investigation. Cellebrite is available in a form you can carry to a house, to a scene, to wherever the device is. It does not have to be done in an office. It can be done anywhere, with anyone watching. So let's be absolutely precise about where this case stands tonight. Every question you have about that phone, what was sent, what came in, what was deleted, what the timestamps prove, whether anything corroborates a sighting at 5 or 6 in the evening, whether anything contradicts it, every single one of those questions is currently unanswerable. Not because the technology is hard, not because the data is gone, because nobody has performed the extraction, not the district attorney, not the family's experts, not anyone. The answer may already exist. It has simply never been looked at. One more small thing before the last stretch, and it's the last stretch that ties this whole standoff together. If this is the kind of breakdown you want more of, subscribing genuinely is the only thing that keeps it in front of people. A family is still waiting on answers. Don't make them wait alone. Now we come to the question underneath everything. Why won't this family just hand it over? If the phone is going to be copied without alteration, and the copy is what gets examined, and nothing is destroyed, why the insistence on being in the room? The answer is not legal strategy. The answer is that they have watched what happens to evidence in this country when it goes into a system alone. And so has everybody sitting on that panel. Joseph Scott Morgan raised the case himself, not as a comparison someone forced on him, as the parallel he reached for. Ellen Greenberg was stabbed more than 20 times, including the back of the head, the back of the neck, wounds to the back that severed the dura of her spinal cord. The ruling was suicide, and here is what happened to the evidence. The scene was not fully documented. Philadelphia police told the apartment manager to go ahead and clean it up, and referred a professional cleaning service to do it. The apartment was professionally cleaned. Gone. But there was a second chance. The apartment manager had taken video of the inside of that apartment, not for the investigation, but to demonstrate that nothing had been taken, that everything was accounted for, before and after. When investigators realized the scene had never been properly processed, that video became the only surviving record of what that apartment looked like. It was handed over to Philadelphia PD. They lost it, and Morgan added the detail that made him bring the case up in the first place. Ellen Greenberg's computer left that scene as well. It was never examined. never examined, in a death where the ruling was suicide and the family has fought for years to have it revisited, the device containing her communications, her state of mind, the entire record of the days leading up to her death, walked out the door and was never analyzed. Morgan was careful about it, and so are we. The people who took that computer were family members of her fiancé. For all anyone knows, they took it so it wouldn't be stolen. Nothing nefarious may have happened at all. That's not the point. The point is that it was never examined, and that once a device leaves a chain of custody, the question of what was on it becomes permanently unanswerable. Now, put that beside a Mississippi family being told to surrender the only device their son used on 24 hours' notice while they're out of state, with no agreement in place about who handles it or when it comes back. And it isn't only Greenberg. Look at the Nancy Guthrie investigation, Nancy Grace said. A pizza delivery driver walked right over the blood evidence to deliver a pizza. That's the standard being applied to scenes in this country. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's the documented record, and then bring it all the way home to this case because Dave Mack did. His framing was blunt. He put air quotes around the word investigation because early on, this was a drowning. That's all. No investigation had even been done. Nolan wasn't found for nearly 2 days. And in that window, the family was not getting the information they felt they should have been getting. That is the foundation this standoff was built on. Not paranoia, not obstruction. A family that watched the first hours of their son's death get handled as a non-event, who are now being asked to trust the same process with the last thing that might explain it. Greg Morris made the observation that sits at the exact center of this, and it cuts both ways. His point: look at how law enforcement has actually behaved over these 6 weeks. In a genuine criminal investigation, law enforcement uses its tools. It seizes devices, and they have not seized Nolan Wells' phone. To Morris, that's evidence they truly are treating this as a possible drowning, that nothing has told them otherwise. But turn it around. If this is not being investigated as a crime, if no warrant was ever sought, no device ever seized, then why the sudden 24-hour ultimatum on the 12th of August? And why is a grand jury reportedly being convened? Because that's the other thread. Nancy Grace raised it directly. A grand jury being assembled inside the district attorney's office does not mean a crime occurred, but it does suggest that somebody somewhere is treating this as more than an accident. You cannot have it both ways. Either this is a drowning that requires no criminal tools, in which case there's no basis for a 24-hour demand, or it's serious enough for a grand jury, in which case, why was that phone never seized in the first 6 weeks? And Nancy Grace's own framing of what's unresolved is the reason the answer matters. Even if there was water in his lungs, even if he did drown, how did he get in the water? Did he fall? Was there a struggle? Did he hit his head? Her words? There's a lot more to it than saying, oh yeah, he drowned. So here is the case tonight. There is a claim that everyone on that boat passed a polygraph, and their own attorney says his clients never took one. There is video of 3 boats leaving, and no video of any of them coming back, and inconsistent accounts of when they did. There are 2 witnesses who could clear the Triton group entirely, described by an attorney who represents that group, with no names attached, no details of the identification offered, and a party environment that a room full of trial lawyers agreed would be shredded on cross-examination. There is a family that said yes on the 15th of July, heard nothing for a month, and then got a 1-day ultimatum while they were out of state. There is a standing offer right now to do the extraction any day this week with everybody in the room, and there is a phone, powered down, not overwriting anything, holding a chronological record of the 4th of July that no eyewitness can match and no lawyer can rehearse, holding texts, photos, Snapchat timestamps, and, according to a founding member of the FBI's Cellular Analysis Survey team, holding the recoverable content of messages somebody may have chosen to delete, flagged as deleted, sitting in unallocated space, waiting. The one text that could reframe this entire investigation may already exist. It may prove exactly what Tyler Cox says it will prove, that his clients left at 4:30 and Nolan Wells was alive on that island after they were gone. It may prove something else. Nobody knows. Because in 6 weeks, with a grand jury reportedly being assembled, not one person has plugged that device into a calibrate and pressed the button. It's a 2-hour job. Everyone involved has publicly agreed it should happen. The family has named the week. The technology exists in a bag you can carry, and it still hasn't been done. That's not a mystery about what happened on Horn Island. That's a mystery about the 6 weeks since. To be clear about where the record stands, no criminal charges have been filed in the death of Nolan Wells. No one has been named a suspect. The acquaintances who were aboard the Triton have not been accused of any wrongdoing, and their attorney states that they are cooperating with investigators. No forensic examination of Nolan Wells' phone has been performed by any party. The polygraph claim referenced here was made on air by a speaker whose account is directly contradicted by counsel for the individuals involved. The witness sightings described are unverified claims made publicly by an attorney representing an interested party. Everything in this video is reporting on public statements made on Nancy Grace's crime stories and by the attorneys, journalists, and experts named throughout. If any of that changes, we'll bring it to you.